The two most awaited records of 1979 were from the Eagles and Fleetwood Mac. Both bands had released blockbuster albums in 1976 that went on to define the 1970s, Rumors and Hotel California. And they were probably the two most overplayed records of that decade as well. I would probably add in Saturday Night Fever and Grease to that short list. And you still couldn't get tired of them. The empire craftsmanship of Rumors and Hotel California, the songwriting skills, the perfection of their productions was simply undeniable. Hotel California was a more sweeping and epic statement than Rumors was, and far more cynical and wistful, but Rumors was a soap opera about the band, which made all the players even more fascinating than they already were because of the music they wrote and performed. And it was fun in a way Hotel California wasn't. Don't stop. You make love and fun. Go your own way. Hotel California was very serious by comparison. And those of us following the Eagles' career knew a bit, not all, but a bit, about the problems the band was having while making their follow-up to Hotel California. In fact, they had been in and out of the studio for a year and a half. And by the time they finished, they had ended up making a so-so 40-minute record, their weakest. The Long Run, which came out the fall of our sophomore year, was a letdown. We wanted to like it, but there was very little on it I responded to. And yet, if I hear the ballad I Can't Tell You Why, or the title track, the record's best song, I can be automatically transported to 1979, and specifically 1979. I Can't Tell You Why doesn't conjure up a mood. It conjures up a place in time for me. Herb Alpert's Rise achieves this too, and in my memory, I'm blasting the song out in a convertible as we drove across the canyons beneath LA's caustically blue and sunny sky in 1979. This is still an unforgettable moment to me. I remember this so clearly, but it only in 1979. The song was locked down for me during that year, and really nowhere else. The Long Run may have ended up selling 8 million copies, and Heartache Tonight was a #1 hit that I never responded to, but there was nothing interesting about The Long Run, except that the Eagles, America's supergroup, had made it. However, Fleetwood Mac had done something new, and the first single from its massive double LP Tusk, its title track, was some kind of revelation. It sounded like nothing we had ever heard before. The single was released in September, our first week back in high school, and the ominous tom-tomming of the drums seemed to go on forever, adding to the suspense of the song before the first verse even kicked in, sung by Lindsey Buckingham in an eerie, almost threatening low voice, a psycho killer about to erupt, asking a series of questions. Why don't you ask him if he's going to stay? Why don't you ask him if he's going away? And it was hard to get a handle on the hook, but the hook was in the drumming and in the USC marching band that played on the song. It all comes together or blows apart in a cacophony of sound before the rhythmic drumming and the song's chorus starts again. It sounded so weird and so epic compared to anything else on the radio that our expectations for the record were either, for some of us, off the charts, or others were dubious. And when it was released a month later, everyone bought it, and it was crazily expensive at $16, unheard of for a pop record in 1979, and very few liked it then. For me, it was almost a new wave record. These were 20 Fleetwood Mac songs, but they were Fleetwood Mac songs influenced by a post-punk production, and I was thrilled by the design and the ambition, and I loved the cool minimalist cover of a dog biting at the leg of a guy. Tusk, some of us had heard, was slang for penis, though it wasn't that widely known then. Mick Fleetwood confirmed it decades later in his memoir, and that was cool too. Tusk was, at the time in 1979, the most expensive rock album ever recorded, costing over $1 million to make, which was shocking then, and it only went on to sell 4 million copies, making it a commercial failure. It never even made it to #1 on the Billboard 200. The album sounded almost completely experimental to people. They couldn't locate the hooks. The least interesting and most generic song on it became its second single, the Stevie Nicks penned Sarah. And really, besides Tusk, I think the only single from the record that landed. Tusk mystified a lot of people, and I had friends who argued that the songs were there, but the production, stripped down, spare, minimalist, ruined the record. Fleetwood Mac wasn't new wave. Why was Buckingham trying to turn them into a new wave band? But Buckingham wanted a record that sounded nothing like Rumors, which had sold 20 million copies, and he was wildly influenced in that moment by the Talking Heads. And supposedly, like everyone else in Fleetwood Mac, as well as the Eagles, he was out of his mind on cocaine. You could hear the commercial promise of the record in a lot of the songs. Stevie Nicks' Sisters of the Moon was, for me, the record's highlight. It came right at the end of side 2 before the record moves into its second half with side 3 and side 4. And some of the songs sounded as if they could have come from Rumours, but only if Rumours had a dark little sister. But it was the production, which I found brilliant, that changed everything. You could hear strains of the old band in Think About Me, classic Christine McVie, and Not That Funny and What Makes You Think You're the One, quintessential Lindsey Buckingham. And I also loved the SoCal dreaminess of Brown Eyes. That's a song that can take me back to the fall of 1979 immediately as well. I was fascinated by Tusk, and at one point I learned to play all of the songs from it on the piano. I was that obsessed with it. The album, though a failure upon its release and somewhat scorned, has only grown in stature since 1979. Its influence among younger performers is fairly vast, and it's referenced a lot. Upon its release, I played it endlessly, and I easily found my way into it, like reading a long and strange novel over and over again. It told a story for me, and I was finding new things everywhere. It was a constant act of discovery. A 90-minute journey I took over and over until I had composed my own one-disc version of Tusk. I discovered the more commercial LP, and I then played that mixtape throughout 1980 and into 1981. Lindsey Buckingham became a hero to me, and I was so enamored of the band that I went to see them at the Hollywood Bowl at their last show on the Tusk World Tour on September 1st, 1980. Since that record had been released, I had learned to drive, I had a car, and I had lost my virginity to a girl and to a guy. I never liked Fleetwood Mac after Tusk. I liked nothing on Mirage, their more commercial and conventional follow-up to Tusk. I found that record completely boring. And Tango in the Night has nothing interesting on it except for the final minute of Christine McVie's Everywhere. That's it. That's the only minute of that record I liked. And even though Tango in the Night sold 15 million records, which is shocking to me considering how bland it is, and placed them back somewhere near the top, Fleetwood Mac was over for me post-Tusk. How did this happen? They might have been my favorite band for a while. There was genius and terrific songs all over Rumours and Tusk. And the first Fleetwood Mac album was Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham. Rhiannon, Over My Head, Say You Love Me, Landslide, I'm So Afraid, a song I never liked but then became obsessed with during my midlife crisis in 2007 and 2008, and I couldn't stop playing it. I liked one or two Lindsey Buckingham solo efforts, especially his early 90s record, Out of the Cradle. And maybe I give that record more meaning because it was the main thing I was listening to after my father suddenly, unexpectedly died at the end of the summer of 1992. The post-Tusk Fleetwood Mac of the 80s is, I think, a complete creative fumble. What happened? Tusk is, as I said, something that comes up with young musicians a lot in ways that Mirage and Tango in the Night never will. And it's interesting to note how influential the album ultimately ended up being for everyone from Kurt Weill to Ezra Koenig of Vampire Weekend to Jeff Tweedy of Wilco. Some of my friends lightly mocked me for being a music snob because I liked Tusk as much as I did. And I was listening to stuff they never heard of, music that wasn't a staple of KROQ. My friends were smart and sophisticated kids in L.A., but they were listening to Top 40 and